Okay, so I'm going to be straight up with you guys. I'm going to be doing a talk about map, reduce, and filter. These are three things that like I said, was pretty intimidated about before when I first saw them, and then I pretty quickly realized they weren't actually that intimidating, and they can be really useful for a lot of things. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to live code. I put together a couple examples, so I hope it goes okay. I will do my best here. If you see mistakes I'm making, feel free to shout them out. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick apart some Star Wars movies and see how we can use map, filter, and reduce to understand them a little bit better. So as we do that, I'll kind of explain what I'm doing. I'll talk about how you might approach it not knowing about these and how you could approach it using these functions. So to quickly start off, I'll just quickly show you what I've got here. Maybe I'll just do this. So I've set up a variable here, and it just basically contains the main Star Wars movies, and so they're all organized here. So like the first one, it's chronological. So the first one is The Phantom Menace, and it goes through the whole series there. It breaks out a description, the characters, the title, a couple other basic things like that that you might want to know. And what we're going to do today is use that to find out a little bit about the movies. So before I start, I'm just going to quickly introduce the first function that we're going to use. So to do that, though, we're going to be using something called arrow functions. So just a quick show of hands, who here knows what an arrow function is? Okay, so most people, they're basically the same as if you do this. If you go and have function, hello, name, and you could say hello. Yeah. There you go. Remember how to do that properly. So you can say hello. Will that work? Did I do that right? No. Return. Right. There we go. What is it, sir? Dollars. Oh, this one. Yep. There we go. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, so that works. So this is a function. It's long to type, so they introduced arrow functions. There's a couple things that are different in terms of how they handle this, but we're going to use them a lot for what we're doing today. So I just wanted to quickly explain what they are. So here we could just turn this into a function instead, like that. And the nice thing with arrow functions is that they have an implicit return in them, so we can drop that. So this is basically the same. Let hello equal. I think it'll be smart enough to bind that properly. So let's try that again. Yeah, so it does the same thing as what the hello function did. It's just a bit shorter to type. So we're going to use that a lot as we work through these examples here. So the first thing I'm going to do is use filter. And so what filter is before you might have something like, if I've got Star Wars here, I would go and I'd take the length of it, and then so I'd do a loop or something like that, going through them, and then I'd have another variable to collect anything that would match and push it into that as I go, and then at the end, it would contain all the things that matched it. So it's not a huge deal to do that, but the nice thing with filter is it's like one single method that does the same thing. So this one's pretty clear. If you come in, you go filter, and then you pass in as the argument to filter a function. So in this case, it's going to take in the movie, and let's see if I can remember how to do this. So we'll do movie.mainCharacters dot includes Jar Jar Binks, because it's Jar Jar Binks. So this will find any movies that don't include Jar Jar Binks. So right now, you can see that that's already returned a lot of info, right? There's 5 movies there. And if we were to just try to summarize, that would be too much and more than what we really need. So the other function that you'll use a lot with this is something called map. And all map does is, if you have an array, it takes each value in the array, calls a function on it, and whatever the result of that function is, it makes a new array where each of those values has been replaced with the result of that function. So it could be something like here, we're going to go and let's put these into good movies. Okay, I'll drop that. Okay, so I'm just gonna double check I did that right. Good movies. Okay, so now if we want to get, say, the titles of those good movies, we would map it and go movie, and then use our arrow function and say movie.title. So now it's gonna go to each movie and pull the title property, and this function will return that. And so it's gonna return a new array where each one of the elements in it is just the title of the movie. So it's a bit more readable, you could work with it. And it doesn't have to be something that's as simple as, you know, just a single element like that. So you could do return an object or something like that, say, you know, title, like that, and you could say characters or something. Characters, like that, and I think, am I missing a bracket? Oh, what did I do wrong?
If you use an opening paren, you need to either return or use a regular parenthesis.
Oh, oh, do I need to return like that?
No, outside of the other steps.
There's so many weird things like that in the syntax.
You can also replace the outside curly braces in the return with just regular brackets.
Whatever. Oh, like so here, go like,
Yeah, get rid of that.
go like that, like that.
Yeah.
Let's try that. There we go. Okay. So basically, though, that instead of just returning the title, we're returning an object if we need some more details there. So those are pretty straightforward. Map and filter are ones that a lot of people get right away. They're not really that complicated. The one that will often throw people off, and this is the one that is really does not have to be intimidating, is reduce. So just quickly, does everyone understand what I just showed there with map and filter? So just to summarize, map takes existing values, runs a function, replaces, or makes a new array, excuse me, with whatever the value of that function was. And filter just goes through and returns a new array with anything matching the function that you turn in when it returns true. So reduce is kind of cool because what it does is it goes and it has something called an accumulator. And so when you call it, so here, let's say we want to get all of the characters from the movies. So we'll do a map again. We'll say movie, and we'll do movie.main characters. And so what this is going to do is this is going to return an array of arrays. And that can be useful, but the problem is usually when you're processing something like this, what you'd really like is that to just be all of those arrays concatenated together, right? So that they're a single element. So what we can do is we can use something called reduce to take what we have there, and I'm just going to do this to make it shorter. So characters, and this is the part I always mess up in the demo. Let's see if I can do this. So characters.reduce, we're going to start with an empty array, and then we're going to take a function that takes in each one of those character arrays, and it's going to return, oh wait, no, it takes in the accumulator and the character, and it's going to return the accumulator dot concat. What did I do? Sorry, guys. Okay, I have to type that again. So it's going to take in, it's going to start with that. So this first parameter is like the initial value that you have when your function is called. And so your function is going to take in two parameters. It's going to take in the accumulator, and it's going to take in each value in the array. And what you do with your function is you go and you take that accumulator, and it'll be the set of values that have kind of been calculated so far. And you're going to go and you can either make a new value to replace it, or you can go and add to it, which is what we're going to do here. So we're going to concat the characters to that. And if I've done this properly, it will return all the characters flat mapped. I think I did that wrong.
Empty arrays.
The second one, yeah. Okay. So, and I think yeah, okay, so now you can see, so what it's doing, maybe I'll put in a console here just so you guys can see. Okay, so this will make it a little bit longer, but what we've got here is, so our function, the first time it's called, this second value here is passed in as the value of the accumulator. That's kind of the initial value. And so it's going to come in, it's going to pass in as the second parameter to your function, whatever value it's on in the array. And then that's what you can use to work through your function and modify the accumulator. So the first time it comes in, it's an empty array. We're going to take the list of characters, and we're going to go and concatenate it with that empty array. And that's where we get the second one from. And then the second time it's called, you can see that now that accumulator isn't that initial value with the empty array. It's the value that was returned from the last time your function was called. So it keeps going through doing that again and again. So whatever came out of your function the last time, you can almost think of it as going in to the next loop or into the next series in the array. So as it goes through, you can see it's accumulating or building up the values. And so in this case, we're building an array, but it doesn't have to. It can be any object you want. So it could be something where you're calculating sums or averages or collecting statistics that you might use to do some of that later. Okay, so the last thing I'll show here is, we'll call these flattened characters. Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
it's just kind of a coincidence that the name of the array of arrays is the same as the parameter that you're passing in, right? Like characters
Mm-hmm.
as the array that's getting flattened, but also each iteration through the name you use there was the same.
Yeah, so like you're talking about here, like the characters parameter.
Yeah.
Where that comes from is that's actually going to be the values that are in that array. So like if we look here, yeah, you're right. It doesn't have to be the same as the characters that I have over here, right? So I could change it and say it's, yeah. So here we could say like current, I guess that might be easier. So that would do the same thing. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't have to be named the same as what you're calling reduce on. So this is sort of like the current element that you're in that array. And this is the value that's been accumulated so far. And this is the starting one. So do people understand that? I might show one more example here just to show other ways that you can use that. But does that make sense so far in terms of starting with an initial value and accumulating as you go through the whole array, and then that last time that it's called, whatever it returns, that's what's returned from reduce. So like another thing I could do it for, let's say I wanted to, instead of going and doing this, I wanted to count the number of characters that are in the movies. So I could do this, and we'll do it this way. So we'll start with 0. We could say count, and we would say count plus current dot length. So current is the that array of characters. So we could use this to count how many characters are in each movie and add that all together. So if I do this properly, yeah. So now we know there's, I think, 5 good movies. So we could divide the whole thing by 5. And there's an average of 9.4 characters per movie. I don't know if that's significant, but you can use it to start calculating interesting things like that. So the only other thing I'll show here is we can actually take this big list that we have now of all of the different characters, and you can see there's a lot of duplication in that. Like if I do this, and let's call that flat character. Okay, so now sort. So you can see like, yeah, Anakin's 3 times. There's a bunch of them that are duplicated more than once. So we can use a reducer to gather those together and just keep the unique ones, if I can do this properly. So character. So we'll go through the set of all the characters, and I think I'll just, for this, use, how many people are familiar with the set operator, like the set object? Okay, I'm just going to use that a normal hash. So we'll go like this. We'll say accumulator character equals 1. And then will that, oh, that will return it though, will it? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna build a little dictionary here, and that will go and it'll have a key for each character, and I'm just setting them to 1 because I don't really care what the value is. And then at the end, I can spit out the keys of that dictionary to see who the characters are. So over here, we'll just go like that. We pass in an empty dictionary. Okay, so these are all the characters. They appear once, and if I go dot keys, no, what is it called? This part was unscripted, so let me protect keys. Yeah, maybe I'm doing that wrong. Okay, wait. So what is this?
You'll have to use object.keys.
Right. Okay. So use like the prototype, you mean, or?
Object.keys, and this is the parameter you pass.
Oh, like this, right? Like that. Okay, gotcha. Let's see if that works. There we go. Okay, so those are actually our unique people in the thumb. So we've used reduce a couple of times there. We've used it to take something that had nested arrays and to flatten it, which is something you'll see a lot when you're working with this kind of stuff. And then we've used it again to, instead of using a list or something like, or a loop or something like that, produce a list of unique characters in the films. So I think that's all the live coding I'm comfortable doing right now. I appreciate the help, by the way, that's good. But does anyone have any questions about this? Now, one question I had for everyone here is, what are some good examples of times when you have used either map or filter or reduce? Like, can you think of times that you would use those rather than using a loop, for example?
I got a good one for reduce. So I had a situation where, imagine you had a list of all those characters and you had 3 of Anakin Skywalker and 2 of Yoda and so on. And I used reduce to count the number of times each character would have occurred in that array. That was really useful.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Cool. All right. Well, I think I'll wrap that there, and maybe we'll take a few minutes break. I'm just going to check on the pizza, and then while they get started, we'll eat pizza right now. All right. Thank you, everyone. All right. I'm just going to see when the pizza's coming.